Welcome to episode 10 of Box Turtle Bites. I'm Jason. He's TJ. TJ, what are we doing tonight?
Now we're going to explore the big buzzword going around, MCP servers.
Model Context Protocol. Yeah, this is, like TJ said, this is the buzzword of the moment in the AI space. So, we thought we'd play the buzzword game a little bit. So, real quickly, what is MCP? What's the point of it? What does it do?
Basically, Model Context Protocol is a way of, there's history there, right? So it at its basic form, it's a way for an LLM to connect to something and communicate with it or interact with it. When it first started out, it was really more intended for agent-to-agent communication. But people quickly realized that they could basically set up these servers to access external tools, services, kind of whatever, through a unified interface that is easy for an LLM to pick up. I think once you get into the code, you'll be as excited as you were for functions, but it has its place, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. One of the things that I think it's what we'll dig into as we go, kind of discover a bit today. But I feel like it's one of those things that, like you said, it has its place. I feel like it's being super hyped right now, and so everyone's trying to use it everywhere, even if it's not the right solution. But I do think it has its place. So let's kind of dig in a little bit, and I'll share my screen just real quickly. Basically what we're going to do right now is I got VS Code running, and it's got MCP supported it now with GitHub Copilot. So all I did right now is I've got an MCP server that accessing my file system, and you can see I asked it what are the files on my desktop, and ultimately it ran the command for me and then said, yeah, here's a file called json.jpg. And yes, I do actually have a picture of myself on my desktop for whatever reason, because, I always need that uploaded into various things. So, although most of the time I just use my little Green Bay logo icon. But anyway, interesting, did what I asked it to do. What's really becomes interesting is when you start adding more things that have more value, right? File systems can be a little bit interesting. I'd like to see what it can actually do. Can it do more than just show me things? Can it actually use that to help me write code, for example? So what are some of the I'm gonna so
Why don't you use why don't we get the Brave one set up, and I was getting an API key for it.
Yep. Okay. I will while you're getting the API key, I'm going to go ahead and share just the kind of list of options. That's not the right one. There we go. So this is some sample ones from MCP, and I think TJ, you mentioned this, that was created by Anthropic. So this is Anthropic's protocol that everyone's kind of picking up on right now. The protocol itself is actually pretty simple, right? It can run over HTTP. I think it can run over on pretty much anything, but it's really designed to kind of simplify the communication so that you don't, as a person writing something to talk to it, you don't have to understand the ins and outs of how to communicate with each individual thing. It's really kind of meant to be generic. So it's up to the provider of the server builder to build that simplification into it, I guess. Issues with Brave?
They just want a credit card.
Of course they do. So these are some examples that they've got out here for, and it's the one that I showed you so far. I've got file system hooked up, trying to see if we can get Brave search. But there's some different ones here. You can connect to Slack. I thought this was kind of interesting. You can connect to a AWS knowledge base from Bedrock, so you can have what's interesting is this is providing context, right? Which is exactly what a knowledge base does already. So I'm not really sure why you would do that, other than I guess maybe to get it to your local machine.
Well, if you wanted to expose.
Yeah, if you wanted to expose it, yeah.
You could also have it serving multiple knowledge bases with descriptions, and
That's true.
then it can
Yeah.
act as a kind of a knowledge base router.
Yeah, a router, even an aggregator, right? Because in theory, you could have it go to more than one.
Yep.
Based on the inputs. You can even connect it to your SQL database, right? They've got a Postgres version of it, and we can look into some of this code here in a little bit. But I think the first thing is just kind of playing around with how these things work and like how you can make them a part of what you're doing. So I'll go ahead and set up Brave Search. They're pretty easy to set up. So there's usually a couple of options. I've so far been using the MPX version of it. Oops, I don't need all that. Because it doesn't require Docker to be running. You literally can just take this little bit.
I don't have a key though.
Oh, you don't have a key?
I don't have my card down here.
Oh, oops. Okay, well,
Uh,
I won't do Brave Search.
we could do the GitHub one,
Yep, that'll work. I can do that one.
because then we can just generate a PAT.
Yep. GitHub. There's a whole bunch of commands. And so if you go look through here, like it shows you all the different things you can do. Like it'll allow you to actually create things, right? Create update files, create push files. So it's not just read access. Like it actually has the capability of running commands for you, which like
I wonder if
I
it already
see the
has that,
value of it.
though.
Huh?
I wonder if that has that.
I think it does. If you
No,
give
I
it to-
mean the VS Code itself.
that's a good question. I don't know. All right. Now is a situation where I can't show this anymore because people are going to be able to see my GitHub personal access token. So I'm going to stop. Well, first, let's look at it real quick. So really what's interesting is it's really just like a drop in, like, okay, here's the thing. And I think I screwed this up. Yeah, I did. Well, I'm going to undo because I feel like I'm really messed up here. I've got this to where I don't have the right indentation, and that's going to cause all kinds of headaches. Why does it keep doing that? I didn't grab the outer one. I think that's right. Nope, it's missing one. I think that's right. We'll see. Why is GitHub? Oh, that's so. It may be. Let's look what it says here. GitHub is not allowed.
Oh, really?
Suggests to me that it's already.
They probably
in a key
already
someplace.
got one.
Yeah. So let's do a different one.
Don't they have like a weather one?
They probably do. I don't know what I've done to this thing, but get back to where I was. Let's see. Slack, Redis, Puppeteer, Postgres, Google Maps. Let's do that. I'm
That
gonna
one's
have a
gonna want a
Google
key,
Maps
too.
key. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Fetch. You can always do fetch. I'll just make a web request. Except it's probably gonna. So this one requires Docker or UVX, which I'm not gonna mess with.
Oh, you don't have Docker?
I have Docker, I think.
I was gonna say one of the other ones that would be interesting would be Puppeteer,
Yeah, if we wanted to run the,
because it'll do browser use.
yeah. Let's see what this looks like.
But
Servers.
Fetch is probably fine.
All right. So in theory, this should be able to run any fetch command, which is effectively going to just do an HTTP. So you can call fetch URL, and it'll get back stuff for you. So if I just do like fetch.
You're not showing
Google.com. Oh, right. I was going to do that, and then I got sidetracked. So I just added this here. This is a little bit to this. I'll do fetch Google.com. Let's see what it
Oh,
does.
that's
I have
interesting.
No
I
idea
can,
what it's going to do.
in the live share, I can start your server and stuff.
That's funny.
Oh no, It's an oversight on their end.
A little bit.
No, literally, it's like
Yeah,
trying to
'cause-
access your user directory on
Yeah.
my computer.
Yeah. All right. An error occurred because google.com was not recognized. Interesting. Wonder what it's looking for specifically. So prompts fetch URL. So like I have to give it in that format. Like I just want to see an example of using this. Maybe it's because I didn't put HTTP in front of it. That would be weird, but maybe. Let's just try it again.
Let me see.
That could be. Nope. Came back empty. Well, I mean that's different. How about this? Let's do our box turtle bytes. You know what? Actually, what's an endpoint that will come back with some JSON? Some examples, something.
Not sure.
Let me just Google example JSON endpoint. That's not helpful. Seriously, people. How is there not dummy JSON products? Let's see if this works. Came back empty.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. Like, so, that's interesting though, because like I'm literally on the page and it's not JSON. Wow, this page is weird. You would think that I could just go out there and easily find like a basic endpoint that would return some JSON to me, but apparently that's too much to ask for.
Yeah. It does show if you go to your output and go to the you can look at what the MCP server. Click on the drop down.
Yep.
Is there one for? Oh, I didn't see it running.
Yeah, neither. But it's running a Docker, but it doesn't. And that may be why it doesn't show up here.
Oh yeah.
Because this one's running under NPX.
Check your Docker. Do you have your Docker extension?
I don't know. This machine's like so ancient. I don't know what it's doing. Yeah.
No containers. I would have expected it to. Do you need to start the server?
No, it started it. Like it showed. Yeah, you can see right here.
Poll.
It's doing polls.
Oh, unrecognized arguments.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, that was the first time. So when I did it, I passed in google.com. It didn't like it. But when I put the HTTPS in front of it, it was okay. It's really interesting. Like I really want it to return some JSON. Let me see if I can find a URL that actually has something that's going to give me what I want. I bet you that does. Interesting. So if I hit that endpoint directly that I passed in there, it returns a bunch of JSON.
Really?
Yep.
what was it? Dummy JSON?
Yeah. Hello. Oops, there we go. Got a bunch of JSON there.
Oh. And it still isn't seeing it, huh?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is.
And I can't see the Docker container, huh?
No, let me see if I can. It's been so long since I've actually run this thing. I actually had to download it tonight because it's been just sitting. Images. Well, that's where it doesn't even show.
That's kind of fishy.
Yeah, it is. Wonder if it's like MCP fetch. It doesn't show up on my images. That's really weird.
Oh, I don't even see it started.
MCP. I mean, it's running.
No, like in your VS Code. So go back to your VS Code.
Yeah, hold on.
In the config file, you see how that one says it's running above file system, and that one, the fetch says start on it?
Yeah,
Try clicking start.
there you go. Running. Let's see what it does now. Continue. Same thing.
Oh, the dash URL?
Does not recognize. It seems the fetch
It's not
requires
supposed to use
different
URL, is it?
syntax. Yeah. Would you like me to adjust the configuration or explore it? Sure. See what it does.
Apparently it wanted to.
Okay. I don't feel like that really helped me.
It's not started again.
Yeah. I don't feel like that's going to do what I want it to do. This looks really messed up.
Yeah, restart. Or don't do what it
Yeah.
wants. Okay, so now it's running.
It's
Oh no, it's still not. It's still erroring.
Start. So this is running.
Okay, and like I can see the container up.
Yep.
So we can have it do it again and
Continue.
oh, that time it did the command.
It didn't get back anything.
Let's look at the logs of the. Over on the left.
Which one?
On the left, you have the individual containers. We can
Oh,
go
over
look
here.
at like the
Yeah.
logs of the container.
Oh, it's interesting. It's in here twice.
Yeah, I think you've got both going. If you right click on one of them, view logs.
Get rid of this other window. Go away. I'm going to assume it's this one. Fetches URL. Da-da-da. No, doesn't like. Although originally you did not have internet access.
Yeah, that's just like the prompt.
Yep.
Try running it again. Just fetch again.
I'm gonna turn this other one off just to.
Yeah, or just turn them both off, just so that we can start wanting to know which one.
Yep. Pretty sure it said stop. There it goes.
All right, now
Error.
it's error. Restart, yeah. Okay. Then left click on it and open up the logs before you ask it to do it.
View logs. All right. Let's see what this does. Continue. Guess I could have hit always allow, but
There it goes.
There it goes. It's having multiples running. Didn't
Yeah,
work.
it probably just was getting confused
Yeah.
on which one to use.
Yep.
But there's a pretty
Yeah. So that, I mean, it's interesting because like that this obviously a bunch of garbage data, but if we look at if we're looking at the data, it's it's a bunch of information about some product, right? And so like it's got price information, whatever. And then you can imagine like that being useful if you were wanting to like do some local stuff and pull in, maybe you're doing some pricing information. You want to compare your price to something or whatever, update information. Quick way to get it in there. If that, assuming they already have that built, right?
Yeah. One other thing, like if you go click on your file system one, on the very right hand side, there's 11 tools. So if you click on that, it'll show you.
Where's that at?
It's in your config file. It's like the like subtitle.
Yep.
So all the way over. Yeah.
Yep.
You should be able to click that, or can you not?
Doesn't do anything.
Oh.
But
that would have been cool.
Yeah, it would have been nice. But like I can open that back up again real quick just to see what that one looks like.
But yeah, like it will also tell you like how many tools that MCP server has available.
And I think that's like to me that's where the potential power for this is there, because it has the potential to like make things really easily discoverable, right? Like again, oops, of course I shared the wrong screen. Like it I don't think it solves every problem that people have. I think where people are jumping ahead of it is, we did tool use stuff, right? And I think for tool use, if you're doing something locally, you control all the data, all the information. Tool use is probably your better option because you don't have to set up all these servers and stuff to access something that you already have access to.
Yep.
But if you wanted to expose it to someone else, this could be a good option, right? Like,
yep.
And again, like these are what he was saying. These are all the different tools that are available inside this. So you can read a file, read multiple files, write files, edit files, right? So like this is where like from a tool perspective, I could in theory edit a Word document, right? And it could read it and write it and save the document for me. I can move it around on the disk. I could like say I wanted to write something to organize my files. If I trusted it. You could have it go through and organize it. I would definitely put some constraints on that before you jump on that one, because I'm pretty sure it has the ability to delete files. Maybe. Nope, doesn't look like it does. So you might be saved from your file system being destroyed, but who knows what else it's going to do to it.
Yep. No, I've read actually that there's some people that are exploring it from like the platform services teams out there, like exposing like an MCP server for different things.
Yeah.
So that maybe the teams that they're supporting need to have some sort of like tool access for their LLM flow or something of that nature. So that's one of the things I've seen. Also saw. There's a lot of AWS labs stuff going on where they're basically experimenting with creating an MCP server that will auto-register Lambda functions as endpoints.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. Definitely could see some power in that.
I think one of the things that I've seen that's interesting, I'd like to kind of see how well this works out. I assume there's some MCP servers involved in this, is like Figma, where you have a designer that's able to use Figma and effectively generate code using Figma and connecting to not just the Figma repository, but the code base itself, and be able to actually get like real running prototypes out that aren't just Figma prototypes, right? Because I know you can do a lot of stuff in Figma, but getting that into code, I think about like how much effort that would save from a developer perspective of not having to translate things back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could imagine it would be just an MCP server over GitHub, basically.
Yep.
and they would just be pulling the files and making a pull request. And in fact, that GitHub tool that's right there has the potential of that implementation. I think like the elephant in the room with all of it though is the security of these suckers.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. I think I've seen a lot of conversations around not just the security, but how it translates into the acceptable use of an API, right? So like people will build an MCP server on top of an API that they don't own, and it like has the potential to completely violate the use for that API. Like there's no real guardrails for it. Now, obviously, people could do that at any point with like a REST API, right? They can put a REST API in front of somebody else's API or whatever. But it feels like there's a lot of like things going on right now where a lot of it's just things are moving so quickly, right? And people are trying to stay ahead of it. But
It's going to be a lot of large Vercel bills.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be a lot of things that have to be figured out still, right? Like this is a new protocol. I mean, what did they come out with it? Like sometime late last year. So it's been out for probably about 6 months now, maybe not quite 6 months, but that's pretty young. And like, there's a lot, and really it's picked up in the last couple months. I think I've like in the last few weeks, it's like, I can't open up LinkedIn without seeing at least 20 posts about it, but it's still pretty young, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of opportunity for us to figure out what needs to be done to make it better. I think there's going to be a lot of security questions on it, and I think that's where the big question marks for me are. Is like, if we're going to expose this, how do we do this in a way that is secure? Like, you know, if
And
you
we
go,
can dig into some of that.
yeah, I mean, let's look at it a little bit. I think what's interesting, because we started down this path, right, and that is, and actually, I'm wondering if even my Git one is where I set it up wrong. I'm gonna like go into this again and try to set up GitHub.
So I was ready to jump right in. Jason's like, well, maybe we should tell people what they are first. Because I was like, let's build one on Lambda. No one's done it. I want to do it.
And we're gonna, by the way, I think that's what we'll do next week. Or next time. So stay tuned for that. But yeah.
So I have basically the TypeScript
Yep.
library. This is where it all started. This is their model context protocol, their TypeScript SDK.
Yep.
And so I think we're talking about the auth. So one of the things that they provide is a way to proxy the auth requests upstream. So, I mean, they're really not that complex, right? It's basically an Express server that is responding on a very specific URL endpoint, and that's about it, right?
Yep.
And so,
not complicated.
if you can do Express servers that do authentication, you can do authentication around your MCP server. I think the problem is it's so popular that people are not like, well versed in the authentication authorization layers, and this step is getting kind of skipped. Of like, what's stopping everybody from calling this MCP endpoint?
And I think even more importantly than that, like the endpoint itself is fine, but like let's take multi-tenancy in as an example. And multi-tenancy, by the way, like almost everything you do has multi-tenancy involved in it nowadays, right? So presuming this endpoint that you're using is backing data from multiple clients, how do you make sure that you're only accessing yours, right? Like if you don't do this right, this is really dangerous.
Yep. And so
what is the it's proxy auth, right? Is OAuth. Okay. So this is an OAuth connection.
Yep. This is basically you can proxy the OAuth request to an external authorization provider. So fancy way of saying, I'll let somebody else verify the token and basically give me it back.
Are there security implications for me as a consumer of this, right? Because I'm saying I'm giving you my OAuth credentials that you're going to pass into somebody else.
Oh yeah, I mean there's definitely going to be all kinds of implications of it.
Man in the middle sort of problem.
Man in the middle.
Yeah.
They're because there's so many popping up, you don't know who wrote it. Like,
right.
For all you know, you're passing your stuff and they're off logging it somewhere.
Yeah.
I think the important thing to remember is like the underneath value is just built on Express. So make sure you have your middleware in there. Make sure that you're, establishing, your authorization and your authentication. I won't go too deep into those patterns because they're pretty well known.
Yep.
But definitely something to keep in mind. But
I think the other side of that, from the consumer perspective, is you kind of hinted on this, is know who you're dealing with, right? Don't just plug in anything and assume it's okay. This is a lot like when you go to grab a package out of, whether it's Node.js or whatever system you're using. Just because a package exists doesn't mean that it's safe. Yep. Make sure you understand and trust who this person is. I think where open source is big. I don't know how well it works from a server perspective. That's probably one of the advantages of packages, is generally you can go look at the content of it, right?
Yep.
But this is running on a server somewhere.
Yep.
So even if they had it open sourced, you don't know that that's what they're actually running.
Yep.
So you got to be very careful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here you're showing some Express.
Yeah. So I always go towards serverless Express.
Yep.
Best in the business when it comes to converting Lambdas into Express servers.
Yep.
Used it to do Teams bots, Slack bots, like you name it. I've ran everything in Lambda.
Running your Teams bots on AWS Lambda. Love it.
And so basically, in that basic example, you have your app that you established through Express, and you're basically going to export that app. And then you're going to just have your handler consume that app, right? Well, that's a pretty easy extension into what a model, what the library from a model context protocol, is going to look for, right? You're establishing the MCP endpoint. Yep. You're creating a streamable HTTP server transport. And then you're just basically doing your connect transport and handle the request, right? Yep. And then closing it out. To me, it's kind of funny when you get down into this, because you're like, well, wait a minute. It's just one endpoint that is serving up the tool config and it's making function calls. Yeah, it is.
So as I'm digging into this, what this really starts to remind me of, it's not even REST that it reminds me of. This reminds me of GraphQL.
Yeah, pretty similar. Yeah,
because GraphQL is a single endpoint. It is discoverable.
Yep.
If you turn it on, so you can know what the schema is, you can know what the queries and mutations are, you know the full structure of the data, all at a single access via post to a single endpoint. I guess technically this has multiple endpoints: get, delete.
No, those are just there to say it does not handle.
Don't do that. Yep. Sorry. So it really is just post.
It literally is one endpoint.
So which becomes a very GraphQL like that. It's really interesting. And so this is the thing that always kind of why do we always feel like we need to create another protocol? Maybe this is needed. I don't know. I don't have all the answers to this. It's early, and I'll be honest. I haven't really played with it much, right? So this is new. I haven't really dug into it a whole lot. I've been playing with AI stuff a lot, but this is the first time I've really started digging in MCP. Seen it a lot, read a little bit about it. But what is this doing for me that I can't get out of something else?
A
little bit unknown.
Well, I think I think to your point when we were kind of talking about it earlier, you brought up a good point. If you're exposing this to someone else, this is a very quick and standardized way to basically communicate, hey, I have an MCP server, and they can quickly connect to it and get what they need from a tool perspective. Yeah. From an internal perspective, I think it's complete overhead because if you look, so this is the server. Basically these lines right here is the totality of what endpoint you're exposing. Yeah. And then you're just basically putting on that server, that endpoint, a resource, a tool, and what the prompt is.
Yeah. And presumably you could have multiple tools.
And you could have multiple tools. And so there's that. But in the same respect, like if you've watched some of our previous episodes, that's just the function that we
Right.
define, const echo.
Yeah. And I think, like, to me, that's where, again, like the conversation of when you should use this and when you shouldn't. I personally, and again, like, convincing me I'm wrong, but personally, I don't see this as a good solution if you're building internal tools that are using AI in your own application. But if you're trying to expose your tool to other people to use, then it seems like it's a good option.
Yeah. And I guess I could get, like, I don't know that I would connect it to a SQL database, but certain tool sets
Yeah,
out there that might
sure.
not have APIs or might be, I could imagine, I mean, how many old, like, desktop-y things or
Yeah.
server run things that it would
That are
take
hard to-
ages
yeah.
to put an API over it, but you could put a MCP server with server tools that could do drop into exec
Right.
and run,
Yeah, that's true.
some
That's true.
some tool chain,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, especially to your point, right? Like, since you can drop into exec, you effectively can run a raw command that maybe you had to do a Unix command to get to, and it provides you access. I think one of the examples that actually shows up in that list of things is Bedrock knowledge bases, and we were talking about this a little earlier, but like, okay, I can use that already. Like, what does this do for me? But like, you can imagine that being kind of a router where you can have multiple knowledge bases where you can have it, dynamically connect. And also because that allows you to use a knowledge base outside of that application into some other application. So like, for example, in VS Code, if I had a knowledge base that was all of our standard processes at work, for our, whether it's knowledge about our development processes or knowledge bases about the company and their kind of how they work. If I can pull that in and run, commands with VS Code or whatever tool I'm using, I can see some value in that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even this one's pretty interesting when you I enjoy just reading the.
Yeah, I was actually
what did
gonna
they
say
do,
it'd be,
right?
It'd be interesting to kind of look at some of these. Yeah.
Like if you actually look, it does a retrieval it takes in the query,
Yep.
the knowledge base ID, and then the number of results to retrieve. And so, like, you can see where they're going with it, right? Like, you have multiple knowledge bases, and you want a quick way for an LLM to have access to numerous knowledge bases very, very quickly.
Yep. Hey, so somebody actually asked a question the first time because, again, I hooked up to LinkedIn tonight, so I actually get to see like these live. Proxy to a specific function, typically a single API endpoint to simplify accessibility. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. When you think about like a user using this, it is intended to simplify that connectivity to something that they don't own, right? To something that they want access to, that they have access to, hopefully in a secure manner. But it is meant to allow the AI tools, the LLMs, to be able to access it in a simple way that you don't have to rewrite the code for every single thing you're talking to.
Yeah, and I would actually expand on it a little bit and not say API endpoint, but
Anything.
a tool set or because like keep in mind like you can be defining multiple tools.
Yeah.
And so like in the file system that Jason was showing earlier, it had create file, list files, all those different things. And so I would think of it as exposing a resource to the LLM that might have multiple commands, might have singular commands, and that to me it's more than just the API API
exactly.
endpoint. Maybe it's an API that represents GitHub. The GitHub one is an example.
Yeah. So when you were talking earlier, I went ahead and I said, what tools can I use from File System? So File System is one of the servers that I've got. Just ask that, and here you go. It lists out all the things. These are all the things it can do that are built into it. Every one of the things that you connect to, every one of these servers is going to have one or more tools that you can do. And the idea then is that as you're using the LLM, you can access any one of those, right? And the cool thing is as you build prompts, you don't necessarily have to tell the prompt use this specific tool. You have to tell the prompt what tools are available and what those tools do. And the idea is that the LLMs and the models themselves figure out what tools to use, right?
Yeah, we should clear that up a little bit. Like, so this MCP and VS Code is only available in agent mode.
Right.
Because the true intention is not, LLM, go do this file command. It's, hey, agent, I need you to clean up my, my files in this repository and put them into a more acceptable standard format and folder structure for, a project, right? And so then that's more in line with what a real world use case of this would be. And then it's going to start thinking, putting together its process, and then utilizing these tools to complete that request, if you will, in an agentic form.
Yeah, so you can imagine this having multiple things where, like, again, file system's one piece of it, but like maybe you need to access some data to understand how to organize that data. And it uses one tool to go figure out, hey, this is how we organize our data. And then it's like, okay, now I understand what files I have, how I organize it. I use the list command to find the files. I use some other tool to figure out what structure we use for this specific thing based on the prompt. And now I'm going to take that and start moving files around. And so it's going to call multiple tools in this process to ultimately get to an end result. That's where eventually you want the things to be. And that's where I think it starts becoming pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, even AWS is kind of going pretty crazy on it, where they have a whole bunch of AWS MCP servers that they're starting to expose. So, there's the core for the server management. Like they have one for documentation that lets you attach that in and suddenly your agent is hyper specific to AWS, right? Like it has all the
or to your company's documentation, right?
Yep. Yeah. I really like that they're even going down the route of the CDK MCP server. That is pretty cool because, CDK NAG is good, but it's generic. Like they can only get so specific with you. If this could actually have the full context of like multiple stacks within a project and be
even
looking at this
internal best practices,
like pretty cool.
Yeah, I think one of the things about CDK NAG that it's cool because you can extend it yourself. You can write your own NAGs, but it's a lot of effort. And if I can just write a document that says this is how we do it, and then pull in something like this to kind of help, that would be awesome.
This one I would love to actually try, the diagram MCP server. Yeah. Supposedly it can generate like these professional diagrams of AWS architecture. Yeah. And so like that would be pretty cool to kind of look at and see too.
Obviously the Lambda one is one.
Yeah, this is the one. I don't know if I talked about it on stream or if it was before stream, but they're
complicated.
What?
They're making it a little more complicated than they need to.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one is actually it's a centralized MCP server that you can register AWS Lambda functions to.
Oh, okay. So multiple functions.
Yeah, so like if you had, a huge infrastructure with a bunch of Lambdas that are doing, all kinds of things, right? Like, maybe you have a order placing Lambda and a inventory listing Lambda. You could expose those all through this MCP server that they're doing by registering it, and it will basically create a tool for your LLMs to use.
Interesting.
Yeah, very cool. Like I like where they're going with some of the stuff that they're doing, and I can see it being super powerful for that agent type use case.
Interesting that I don't know if that's true in all of them, but they're using Python, which is fine. But like,
a lot of them do.
Interesting. Only reason why I think it's interesting is because it was originally written in TypeScript. Protocol.
But yeah, it's pretty. They got some pretty cool things coming up.
What is Windsurf?
Windsurf is the Cursor
Oh, okay.
competitor.
Yep.
OpenAI is
Yep.
trying to buy them right now.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, there's some pretty cool things. Oh, look, vibe coding with AWS MCP servers.
I love vibe coding.
Oh,
the
it's an actual video. Nice.
Oh, I gotta love it.
Oh man, what else?
So, I mean, I think we've hit the majority of kind of the pros and cons. Obviously, what it is, and I don't know that we really have time to like build out our own thing. I think it's worth doing that on an episode of itself. We can, kind of do a little bit of what you kind of showed already with, and I think there's some gotchas that we kind of glossed over, like streaming within serverless. But are there any things like besides the security that you need to think about?
Probably cost. I mean, it's tool use.
Yep.
And there's some really funny gotchas when it comes to tool use.
Yeah.
In fact, I was writing basically a tool use function that would create requests, right? And I'll keep it pretty generic, but like basically requests for like, if you were doing an audit or a financial audit or something of that nature. And so I gave it a file and I said, here's the tool to create requests, right? And I started to take out the context from above of the tool uses, and it never stopped until it hit the Lambda timeout.
Lambda timeout, which was probably set at 15 minutes the max or something.
But it was kind of funny. Those are the kinds of things that you definitely have to think about and like be careful on, is making sure that there's like quick escapes and stuff of that nature. Hallucinations will still be there, and stuff of that nature.
Hallucinations are something I think it's really important for people to think about when they're doing tool use. Mm-hmm. Like a hallucination, if you're just asking a question and it gives you something and you're like, that doesn't make any sense, a human can kind of like get in there and be like, okay, you're hallucinating, whatever, try again. But if you have tool use involved, then it's actually going to execute something for you. You need to be very concerned about hallucinations. You need to make sure you have control over them enough to make sure that you're not doing something really bad.
Yep.
What are we looking at here?
This is just their
Different
standard.
clients.
Yeah, the different clients that are supportive of it. The unfortunate reality is, like, from the developer's perspective, this is really focused in on like the IDEs and
Right.
those types of things. But there is ways, like basically you're going to do, you can, and maybe that's one of the things we need to touch on next time as well is, okay, great, I have an MCP server. How do I hook it into, one of my LLMs that are running on Bedrock, right?
Right.
Yeah. Because I think that part gets kind of glossed over.
Yeah, because right now it is largely focused on the developer experience, whether it's you coding or whatever it may be. It's the tools are largely IDEs, and so that's where people are really thinking about it. And I think that's where it got a lot of traction. But I think that's where it's deviated a lot from its initial intent. And that's not to say that it's not intended, it's being used wrong. It's just like it was really around agent to agent conversations more than IDE kind of things, right?
Yep.
And again, like I always say, like things are used in the way that they are needed, right? So this obviously was a need. It's blown up, so it's not invalid. It's just like not necessarily the way it was intended. So that it'll be interesting to see whether or not like does it grow and expand on that, or do we actually shift? Do we need something else for the other side? There's Google's agent to agent stuff as well.
Yeah, their A2A just came out. I've heard it had some rough corners, but you can see where it's going. I mean, you can even see it from this protocol, right? Like, yeah, right now the tool use is defined. They're defining it against a SQL database with like, the drop table, update table, all that kind of stuff, right? But you can imagine an MCP server might be a collection of tools that are actually agents underneath, right? And so, maybe you could see how this expands out into that multi-agent type of environment where this agent has the access to the MCP server and can spawn off 3 or 4 other agents to go do their thing.
Yeah.
And then it all kind of comes back in the form of, the completed task that the agent farm or agent multi-agent framework was trying to accomplish.
Yep. Yeah, I think, again, I think that's where the real power is, right? Like I think we're going to continue to see a lot of the IDE stuff. I think I think that's what's going to give it its legs. It's going to get people starting building more and more of these servers, the MCP servers. But I think where it's really going to show its power is when we start having them really do agent to agent things rather than just something that is a prompt from an IDE.
Yeah, one other thing, just like in case people do want to go look and see what's going on, they also created this MCP inspector, and it's something that you can run locally as well. And basically, what it will let you do is see what your server connection looks like, what your transport is, the available resources that are defined within the MCP server. What prompts are available and what template prompts, the tools, and all of that good stuff. And so I highly suggest using something like that while you're developing these so that you can see, what's going on underneath and in that MCP server, because it can be a little bit of black box if you don't put something over the top that you can see this.
I think this is an area, and we've hit a little bit on this before, but I think this is an area that there's a room for a lot more growth, and I think it's starting to come. But visibility in general, right? Like when we're talking about like code in general, observability is a big part of a running system, and I think observability into what's going on in an AI system is going to become more and more important, and that's kind of I think that's kind of what you were showing there, right? Is a way to do some observability on top of the MCP layer.
Yep.
And there just needs to be more and more of that. We're gonna, because that's just like I got to understand what's going on.
Yep. And I should also mention that they really only offer in this, at least in the MCP servers that Anthropic kind of spun off, and where a lot of this is coming from. It supports STDIO and streamable HTTP. Like it's not gonna do the traditional wait and long wait periods, and so it does kind of push you into a certain set of infrastructure. Not everything is going to support streamable HTTP. I mean, if you try and do it on API gateway, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, so that's actually interesting because I'm curious where this is going. I remember reading about this a little while ago about how like I feel like they're trying to figure out a way to deal with this, right? Like what's that right there? Stateless management.
That's just for this.
For the back end.
You can do sessions.
Okay.
So that because it's remember when they're doing that tool use, it could be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yep.
They offer this is a stateless one, so like if it's not going to want to go back and forth type of a thing.
Yeah, but I feel like that's something that's at some way going to have to be handled, right? And again, this is where like I feel like it's evolving, but especially because so many of the LLM things take so long that there are going to be things that need more time than like you don't necessarily want to have to leave that connection open, especially if you got like all these things kind of spinning in the background and in today's world of asynchronous workflows where you may not even be connected to the server that's doing the processing may not even be the server that you connected to initially. There needs to be a way to get that message back out. So I feel like that's something that's likely to come. But yeah, it's not there today.
Yeah. And some of the other cool things, I mean, if you really dig into it, like there is like dynamic. And so that's like you can almost you can expose the tools as it goes, as opposed to just being like you can use all the tools all at once, right?
So
so you can have some sequencing built into how you do it. In this case, like, they're doing
choose your own adventure.
Kind of. I mean, in all reality, it very much is so. But I think it's also important to realize this is a way that you can do that. Like, I like that they did this example of, okay, I got to upgrade my, like, once my auth is upgraded, then I
do
can
something
go
else.
do
Read and
some
write,
of
yeah.
these puts and stuff of that nature.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think, I mean, that actually becomes kind of an interesting way where you could imagine that being the first step to anything, right? Like, if everything needs to be secure, then the first thing I got to do is auth before you even see what you can do, and then everything is kind of after that. But yeah, that's interesting. You could imagine that being like, got to go call some endpoint before I can get to the next piece, or so on and so forth. But
Yeah, I mean, like, so, like, you could imagine, like, you don't want to have to, like, maybe you have an MCP server. Like, this is a good example. Maybe it can list messages,
yep,
but you also want to be able to put messages, but you don't want to spin up a new MCP server for every one of those, right? And so, like, you can have this upgrade auth scenario where,
yeah,
the vAdmin has that ability, but
Yep.
everybody else can still list the messages,
Yep.
right? So, like, I do like that they did that as kind of an example.
yep. And as always, if you're implementing this, make sure you're thinking about security, because like it's really easy to like, oh, I auth and updated my auth and it impacts everyone. So make sure that you're context aware.
Yep.
That's cool. I think there's, again, like, I came into this a little bit like skeptical. I saw kind of where it was going, saw where it's came from, but wasn't really quite convinced that it's like the solution yet. I think as I'm starting to see it more, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to really see how this can be used, what it can do. So yeah, I think it's got some potential.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes. Like I said, it's early. I think it definitely has a lot of potential to shift, but I don't think it's going to shift to where it doesn't exist. I think it's just going to shift and tune it more than anything.
Yeah, I think it will just get more. It will get hyper focused into tool sets that just don't have APIs, and we don't want to go write APIs to it.
Yep.
That's where I see it like really becoming super powerful. And in those controlled environments, right? Like, I mean, browser use is dangerous, right? But if you can put it into a controlled environment with an MCP server that has all of the tools available to use a sandboxed off Chromium, suddenly it's not that big of a deal, right? And so there's definitely like interesting use cases that you can come up with where this definitely fills a need. I don't know that the hype is worth it for like everybody needs an MCP server that seems to be going around right now.
Yeah.
But definitely
it's like everything.
Use cases.
Yep. Everything is going to get hyped and everyone's going to feel like they need it. And then, a few months later, they'll be like, you may not need that.
It's like everybody asking LLMs to do math.
Yep.
We got a calculator for that.
Right. Exactly. It's like everyone had to have blockchain. I'm like, you probably don't really need blockchain for what you're doing. Like, calm down. It's fine.
But hopefully this kind of demystifies what that MCP protocol is. I think as a follow-up, we'll kind of we'll build a simple one, like show you how you can do it in Lambda.
Yeah, and then we'll, like you said, maybe we'll see if we can't, start.
Yeah, and then we'll basically hook it to a Bedrock call and expose it in its tool use. I actually think it's pretty simple because, again, every time I'm like, oh, it's got to be crazy how they did this, and then I read their example, and I'm like,
simple post
son of a, because where was I? Oh, maybe it wasn't. I'm not gonna be able.
That's all right. We'll
I'm not gonna be able to find it, but basically the client itself, maybe it was in here. Yeah, I think it was. Here we go. Basically, the client side of this is just basically where'd it go? Yeah, here. No. MCP clients. So basically, they just are connecting with a new client. And so
List
Basically,
prompts.
you're going to probably just pass the list tools and list prompts to the Bedrock tool config.
Yeah.
And then when you get back whatever tool call, you'll do client.call tool. And
Yep.
it'll simplify that flow, like, don't
Yeah,
get me wrong, but
Yep.
it's just not.
Not magic.
You always think it's like, oh, it's going to be some magical thing.
Yep.
Like, it's been a while since I've been like, WebSockets. Wow.
Right. Right.
Who thought of that?
Cool. Well, I think that'll end it for today. Again, we'll next be back in a couple weeks. We'll actually play around with building our own. So until then, later, everybody.